This is Andy Gutierrez from StarWars.com, and you are listening to Coffee with Kenobi with Dan Z. This is the podcast you're looking for.
This is Ashley Eckstein, Ahsoka Tano from Star Wars The Clone Wars and Star Wars Rebels, and you're listening to Coffee with Kenobi with Dan Z.
Joining us today for a cup of coffee to talk about the 6th episode in the book of Boba Fett is Tom Gross.
Well, hello, everybody. It's great to be here again. Another week of the book of Boba Fett. Oh, my goodness. This has been so much fun. I really, really enjoyed the responses on social media that we got to our show about episode 5. It was just great.
It was a great time. I enjoyed revisiting the conversation with you. And thanks again, as you mentioned, everybody for all their great feedback. It's truly appreciated. We love seeing your feedback and your analysis in the CWK Cafe, our exclusive. Well, it's not exclusive. It's just a Facebook group. But come in and hang out. We'll talk about some Star Wars in the book of Boba Fett. And today we're going to talk about From the Desert Comes a Stranger. Does that not sound like a wonderfully pulpy title from like a 60s Marvel comic book?
Oh, my goodness. I never thought of it that way. Yeah, I love that image. But yes, it does. It's so vague.
But is it? It's just so, wow, mysterious. So, okay, let's do it. Letter grade, overall reactions.
This is my Ralphie from Christmas Story, his dream, where his teacher gives him an A++++++++, all the way around the room. But it's no dream, Dan. It's real. A+++++. This episode gave me everything I didn't know I needed to know about Star Wars, and I just thought it was a magnificently full of surprises. It drove the story forward. It developed characters in ways that I never thought that I would see some characters be developed. I mean, this is what I thought about halfway through the episode. I thought this might be the greatest thing since Star Wars in 1977. Now, that sounds like a very extreme statement, but as I was watching all the different layers of this episode, from classic characters to semi-classic characters to new character legends to just all the stuff that happened in this episode, there are just some things that took me way back to the very beginning.
That's beautiful. I love your Ralphie A+++. Last week I said if you hit A and just keep hitting the keyboard and hit the plus, and I made some sort of a silly explanation. I think this episode is grade proof. I think for me, it's beyond reproach. It's my favorite hour of television I've ever spent in my entire life on any show ever.
Okay.
The joy and jubilation I felt watching this and sharing this with my son and with all of you and us talking about it. I mean, I didn't want it to end. I paused it and there was like 18 minutes left. And I said to Mason, I want this to last another 3 or 4 hours. There aren't enough superlatives. Last week, I thought was perfection. I mentioned this on Twitter. This week, my heart is so full of joy and Star Wars happiness that I was floating on a cloud, an N1 Starfighter cloud with a crate dragon skeleton on top of a Jawa sandcrawler. I mean, come on, let's just jump into it. It was, I love it. I mean, what's going to be better than this? I feel like I've said that a lot for this.
Yeah. Every week is a stair step.
It is. That's exactly right. And this one, at the beginning, the way it kicks off. So at the end of the last episode, I've got to pay a visit to a little friend or my little friend or whatever he says. Mm-hmm. So you hope for some surprises and some reunions. Mm-hmm. And then we get a reunion right off the bat that I was not expecting. Talk to me about your reactions to the opening sequence before we transition back to the Mandalorian.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't even know where my mind was going with this, but this is where so much, again, sorry. I'm blabbering here. So much happens in this episode that you may need to give me a little bit of a refresher. This is where we're reintroduced to Cobb Vanth. Is that correct?
That's right, Cobb Vanth. That's right.
Cobb Vanth steps in and give me the scene a little bit. I'm so sorry.
No, don't be. So we see like it sweeps down, and we see like some moisture evaporators,
Yes.
percolating or whatever they're doing, and then
Yep.
there's a land speeder with 4 pikes,
Mm.
and then suddenly it pans out, and we see the familiar appearance, sans fed armor of Cobb Vanth.
That's right. Thank you for that. I was getting later
Or sans would be without, yeah.
Okay.
Sorry.
I was getting later instances of Cobb Vanth mixed with this one, so I apologize for that. Yes, what a one! Oh, this was great. You know, when you see the top of those water evaporators, you know exactly where you are in the galaxy. You know you're on the planet of Tatooine, which is the common setting for the Book of Boba Fett. But it was nice to see that this is where we're beginning. And yeah, we see the pikes, we see a land speeder there. They're making a transaction, and then we get the Marshal. So let me tell you exactly where my brain went when we see Cobb Vanth standing there to engage with these 4 pikes. The writer of this clearly understood. I don't know who am I to say this, but I felt like they clearly understood, read the essence of Cobb Vanth from Chuck Wendig's books. I know it's escaping me the series title of those books.
Aftermath.
Thank you. Yes. I'm looking at my shelf and I can't see him over there. So this was the Cobb Vanth that I pictured in my head from the Aftermath series. He's just the Marshal. He's cocky. He knows he's good. And I love when he says, from that horizon over there to that horizon over there, everywhere you can see between, that's my territory. And I'm not going to put up with this anymore. And I love his negotiation skills, how he gives choices. We know as educators that when you're dealing with discipline, choices are a good thing to avoid immediate conflict. And so Cobb Vanth is using the best skills to negotiate this out. Well, we know from Solo, we know from Clone Wars, and we know from maybe a few other places in books that the Pikes don't necessarily negotiate well when they feel they have the upper hand. And so you get a brief gunfight with one left, and Cobb Vanth standing there with the pistol saying, "You're the smart one," and gives them the message. You know, we are not going to put up with spice coming through here. Anyone who comes through is going to get lost. It just showed me the power that Cobb Vanth has. He doesn't have to have the armor, which I think is an interesting comparison to our conversation about 3 or 4 episodes ago, when I was saying that I felt like Boba Fett felt he couldn't be Boba Fett without the armor. And here we have Cobb Vanth, who is as confident without the armor as he was with the armor. And so I don't know if there's any intent to that or not, but I found that to be an interesting thing that crossed my mind as I watched this scene. And when the speeder flies away, the speeder with the pike drives away, he left the small chest of spice. And I love the cinematography here. Classic Western. You get Cobb Vanth walking up, looking straight down, and the camera is down low, and you get Cobb looking straight down at the bottom. He kicks the chest over with his foot, and you see the spice mix in with the wind and the sand, and we know from many other stories that I mentioned earlier, that's a lot of dough that he just kicked over into the sands of Tatooine. So powerful opener.
It was such a wonderful surprise. I gasped. I said, "It's Cobb Vanth," and I was so happy to see him. I like that character. I think he's super cool. And there's something we talk about this being more of a Western than anything. And boy, oh boy, when you see Timothy Olyphant stroll in there, the way that he does, I like what you said about the way he negotiates, the way he delivers like a machismo threat with such smoothness, and
Yeah.
you almost don't know if he's gonna buy you dinner or shoot you. And it's just fascinating to me. I just love that delivery. It's so classic Western. It's just brilliant. He's the fastest gun in the West, one of. And then there's out of the 4 Pikes, there's only one survivor. He's like you said, he lets him leave, but then he makes him leave the chest behind as a fine for trespassing. And then when he kicks it over, I was there. I'm glad that he just kicked it away and just disregarded it as, this is drugs, this is trash, and he gets rid of it. So that actually allowed me and Mason to have a very interesting conversation about why that was important, which is very cool. So it was, when you see it set up like this, and this episode was written by Dave Filoni. This is the first episode not written by Favreau. This is written by Filoni, but directed by both he and Favreau. And you can tell right away the sensibility of this in the establishment of character of the Pikes. The Pikes as villains, I think, are interesting because they're just scumbags. And they clearly have no compassion. All the ones that we've ever met in Star Wars. Yeah. So then we transition to something that for some reason I was not prepared for. We know we're going to see his little friend. We know who his little friend left with at the end of season 2 of Mandalorian. But when I saw R2-D2 twirling around with his sensor and the Mandalorian saying, "Hello, friend," saying friend to a droid, which again, we mentioned last week how much the Mandalorian has grown. That took my breath away, and I was clapping like a 4-year-old at a birthday party. I was just so overjoyed by this. Did you have a similar reaction?
Absolutely. They do that pan down from the trees to his sensor, and you're like, R2-D2. I mean, R2-D2 always brings that out in me, the child, because that's how long we've been friends with R2-D2.
Yeah.
And yeah, I thought the reaction to him was pleasant as well. Although there are other times later in this scene where he calls him droid and gets
when
a little
frustrated,
mildly frustrated. That's a good. Yeah, I was going to say cross, but yeah, frustration is better. But it was lovely to see R2-D2, and when R2-D2 is around, someone else is around as well.
Yeah, so hearing the Mandalorian say the name Skywalker was a wonderful piece of Star Wars adrenaline for me, because Luke's name isn't mentioned in that episode. I would love to see sort of what happens between the end of season 2 and where we meet him in the Book of Boba Fett. But that was amazing. And then we see, the only reason I know the name of these creatures is because I had the closed captions on. They're ant droids. And they're building something, Tom, that, I say to Mason, they're building the Jedi temple that we see in the flashbacks from The Last Jedi. This is going to be Luke's school, and we're seeing it built. At one point, the Mandalorian realizes he has to wait, and they're building him a bench. I mean, it doesn't get much more clever than that. And then something surprising happens with R2-D2 that I think could be a nice metaphor, although not necessarily on the same level as the Darksaber in the last episode. But R2-D2 shuts off. What do you make of any of that?
Yeah, well, first of all, I had the same realization that, I've seen this temple somewhere before. As it gets closer to completion, I have to say, the first minute we saw those ant droids, and that's exactly what I thought they looked like, by the way, is ants. They were busy bees, and we've seen ants working that way, where they have a pattern and a path and all that. But at first I was like, this brings me that creepy feeling of when they were on the ice planet and those spiders,
the Krinkas,
the Krinkas, and that just sort of made me cringe at first. But I realized that they had a very clear purpose, and they had 6 legs and not 8. So I felt better about that, and it became very clear what they were doing. But that was a great moment, seeing that temple being built. I mean, that's some of the stuff that I love about this series and just Star Wars in general. We've been friends with this story for so long, not only in timeline of Star Wars, but in our lives. Dan, you and I were in our single digits in age when Star Wars
Yes.
came out, and we've grown up with it through film and TV and books and comic books. So it's such an exciting moment when you get to see something either before or after you knew what it was. You know what I mean? So here we get to see that. And yeah, I don't know. I've been, since you said it, the metaphor of R2 shutting off is, it kind of reminds me of like Luke's, when Yoda says to Luke, be patient and wait. And so R2's just going to be patient and he shuts off. I'm sure that's not it, but that's kind of what it made me feel like is this is a place of meditation. And so before we take you to see Luke or whomever we're going to go see, we need to wait. And so the R2 instructs the ant droids to build the bench, and Din Djarin is just, you see, at the opening
he lays
of last,
down and takes a nap.
Yeah, at the beginning of last episode, he's so confident and he's so violent, and he gets what he wants. But this is different. This is not. And I'm really liking the way, and we'll probably talk about this a little bit more, but it was established last episode where you have the Mandalorian way and you have the Jedi way, and they are separate things. And so when Din Djarin is in the world of the Jedi, or Grogu's world, he's very unsure of himself and asks a lot of questions. And he are you building a bench? Am I supposed to wait? Hey, and he like waves his hand in front of R2-D2, which kind of reminded me of C3PO. Sometimes we treat R2 that way. And he sits down and he waits like a little boy. Or I've had that experience where my children are in the doctor's office and I'm waiting out in the waiting room, and that feeling as well. So I don't know. I'm curious to hear what you have to say about R2-D2's shutdown patience.
I don't even know what I think. I just remember thinking this is important, but not necessarily narratively heavy. But I do think there's a part of it that R2-D2, I like that you mentioned, we grew up with him, and as kids, that's the feeling he gave us, and he still continues to give us that feeling whenever we see him in any different kind of a medium. So he's very childlike. A childlike with an attitude, of course, but that's sometimes par for the course as well. Yeah. And I love the fact that who knows what kind of agreement I don't know what I'm assuming R2 is referred to as a he, that R2 and Ahsoka and Luke have with one another. But I love the fact that he is so like, I don't know how to handle this.
Yes.
I'm just going to shut down. We've never seen R2-D2 do that before. This must be very heavy. This must be very important. And if that has been conveyed to R2-D2, who's very brave and very brash, and is certainly not someone, you can't put Baby in a corner. Speaking of Jennifer Beals, who's in this episode, you can't put R2-D2 in a corner either. But he shuts down willingly to just disengage from the conversation. That's amazing to me. That's about the significance and staying power of this particular moment, the next 10 minutes of this particular episode, more than anything else. And it's actually, like in Hamilton, they say, talk less, smile more. This is kind of R2-D2's way. You don't know what I'm thinking or what I feel about it, and I can't give anything away if I just don't talk. I just think that's so clever.
Yeah. It also kind of reminds me of The Force Awakens, where R2 is in a low power state, and and did Luke instruct him to do that until a certain moment or point, and so maybe a little foreshadowing of a new behavior in R2-D2 at this point of the timeline.
Yeah, there's definitely a callback to that. That one's much more heavy of like, I don't have my master, more like Argus, the dog of Odysseus. But this one is more like, I don't know, that's definitely like a sort of I think that's a playful wink to what will happen later with R2-D2 as well.
Yeah.
Or maybe old Astromechs just run out of battery quick. Maybe the USB doesn't reach all the way. I don't know the name of this planet. If it's out there and I missed it, okay. But I don't think that's been officially said. It wasn't said when The Last Jedi came out either. It was an unknown place. So we'll see. Time will tell on that one. So as we transition again, we have a change, but we're still on the same planet. And I don't even want to describe it. I just want you to start with this. Wherever you want to go, it doesn't matter to me. I just want to drop. Let's just talk all the way up to where it rains frogs, and we'll stop there. But tell me anything, your reactions, what you noticed, anything that you think is important to chat about here, please.
Well, this isn't going to be a one time that I'm going to say this for this episode, but there was, that surprise moment. We have an expectation, and the expectation is shattered because when Din Djarin pops awake, well, I guess actually R2 comes awake, which causes the Mandalorian to come awake, and we see Ahsoka standing there. I don't know.
Even before that.
Oh, before that?
Yeah, because Ahsoka doesn't show up for a while.
I thought she woke him up when he was on the bench. Okay.
She does, but before that, we pan to nature and Grogu and Luke and frogs.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Yes. My goodness, my timeline of this episode is just all out of whack.
No, that's okay. It was a snow day.
So much happened. That must be it. I'm not on my A game. So, yes. We go to the meadow. We get several flashes through the forest, and we go to the meadow where we see Grogu first, and then we see that he's sitting across a small grassy area with Luke, and they're both in meditation. But in so childlike fashion, Grogu becomes distracted by a frog, which we know we've seen Grogu and his attention when frogs are around, and so in many different places. But so he loses focus and sort of kind of eyeballs, and then he closes his eyes and tightens them harder and tries to focus, but then his eye opens and he puts his hand out, and we see the frog lift into the air. And it's just
lovely. It's just lovely. How did you feel when you first saw Grogu and Luke? Like actually seeing them, what did you think?
Oh, so I watched this by myself early this morning, and then I watched it again later with my family, which is an unusual thing because my family is mediocre on the Star Wars thing. They're not haters of Star Wars or anything, but it's just not their cup of tea. But they do love Grogu. And so when I said, you guys, everybody in the family needs to watch this episode, if for nothing else, I'm just going to give you the preview that you're going to see your little green friend again. And so everyone in the family watched, and everyone was really entranced. And so when they bring that camera down onto Grogu sitting by himself in meditation, the squeals and the all of that, it was just, how do you say it? It was like seeing a baby that you haven't seen in a while. And the baby just brings you such joy. And because you love the innocence, you love the little baby mischief and all that kind of thing. And I feel like I've missed Grogu as much as apparently Din Djarin has. I didn't fly across the galaxy for it, but I've waited several months, a year for it to see Grogu again. And so it was it was such a sweet moment. When I watched it on my own, I was happy for it. I really didn't know that I was expecting to see Grogu in this episode. I really kind of thought it was a preview for future series or something like that. But nonetheless, here we are. And what a great, oh my goodness. It was just so fun to see him. And then I thought, am I going to see Luke? And sure enough, there was Luke right across the way. And man, that in the opening, when I said, this takes me back to, the original Star Wars, and maybe I didn't mean 1977, but certainly the original trilogy, seeing Luke like that, youthful and, being what he wanted to, I don't know that he really wanted or knew that that's what he wanted, but you saw, when you're the last Jedi, okay, when you're, one of the last Jedi and you've been trained by Yoda, you know what's going to come. And so here he is with his first pupil. Oh, what a wonderful moment.
So surprisingly, there's just a lot to unpack with this particular one. But when you see the nature and all the green and the wind and the environment, it's just very lush and full of life. And that's where the Force is. The Force, connects all living things, surrounds us, penetrates us, binds the galaxy together. And so you just know that that's what's going to happen. And I did not, even though I knew, or I didn't know, but how could you not think I'm going to see my little friend? You hope beyond hope that you're going to see Grogu. But I do that thing in my brain where I don't allow myself to believe it until I see it. Because otherwise I'm going to be disappointed. Or I thought, well, maybe that'll be another tease and we won't find out to the end. Or maybe there'll be like a post-credit sequence and we won't see it till season 3 of The Mandalorian. I didn't know. Mm-hmm. So when I saw it right away, again, it took my breath away, but I felt like you said, it was like, it wasn't like you felt like you were a child. You were with one of your favorite children that isn't actually real and isn't actually your child. And I was just overjoyed. I put my hands up in the air and Mason did too. And we just smiled and smiled and smiled. Like, again, sidetracking a little bit, the frustration or criticism that people have about who they're seeing or who they're not seeing in this episode. If that moment doesn't bring you joy, I don't know. I don't have anything else for you. I don't have anything else to offer. That was so joyous and wonderful. And surprisingly, when they panned to Luke, I was just like, oh yeah, there's Luke. And I didn't freak out like I did with Cobb Vanth and R2-D2 and Grogu. And I don't know why. That should be the most shocking of all time. But it isn't because of the magnificence of the end of, the Mandalorian season 2 when Luke shows up. That being said, I was mesmerized by him. And I almost felt like spoiled. I felt incredibly and grossly spoiled that I was seeing Luke Skywalker post Return of the Jedi younger, interacting with Grogu. I felt spoiled rotten. Like I was going to get a Star Wars cavity from all this sweetness going on. And I think that's great. Like that made me very, very happy. But I just thought it was worth noting that I was more taken aback by Grogu than I was by Luke. I don't know why. I don't know why. It doesn't matter because I thought it was just purely wonderful. And then Grogu lifts the frog, the one-eyed frog. Yeah. And I said to Mason, oh, wouldn't it be funny if he tried to eat it? And he did. And then Luke's like, Grogu. Hearing Luke say the word Grogu is very special. Yeah. And then Luke does something, I don't know. Is it ostentatious? That he holds out his hand and he lifts like all the frogs up and then they just casually drop. Like, I know what he was trying to do. Similar to what Yoda did with the size matters not thing with lifting the X-Wing. But that was much more dire because Luke felt like he had to leave. This was just a warm, fuzzy moment. But did it feel a little like show-offy to you?
Oh, I thought he was teaching him a lesson.
Yeah. Oh, I don't know.
I don't know exactly what the lesson was. I found it to be amusing, actually.
Very.
And one thing as far as creators of this go, the expression in the puppet of Grogu, the facial expressions, I don't know if it's CGI or if it's all puppet or a mixture of both, probably both, but the expressions are priceless in this scene. Everything from his mouth opening and closing when the frog is hovering above it to his eyes when Luke is holding his arm to the side and we see that all the frogs are in the air, but Grogu quite hasn't seen that yet. And we get to see the camera angles on both of them looking through the frogs floating in the air, and you can see Grogu's face. And when he looks over and realizes the frogs are there, did you notice his eyes went wider than normal?
Yes.
And his mouth opens up like in just awe. I guess I didn't think of it as being a show off feeling. I guess I felt like it was a way to show, don't limit yourself, don't limit your powers, and all of that. But I thought it was a fun moment. We all got a kick out of it, and my oldest daughter said, "Oh, it's Cyclops frogs."
Totally.
As if she had just read the Odyssey or something last semester.
That's right. No, trust me, I agree. I mean, it was definitely a lesson. It's showing don't limit yourself. Look at you're moving on, but look what you can do. To me, it was almost like an extended commercial for this is what the Force can do for you. Yeah. If this is something that inspires you or moves you, this is how you can fully connect with the Force. I think Grogu spent such a long time hiding his abilities, as Ahsoka taught us in season 2 of Mandalorian, that it's probably, he's rusty and he's having to remember things that he had told himself to forget. And this is an example of, no, this is actually where you can be. But I do feel like it's important, and I want to beat a dead horse or a dead frog here. But Luke in The Last Jedi talking about the hubris of the Jedi. And you get the sense that he felt like he was sort of reading all of the promos too and sort of drinking the Jedi Kool-Aid. This is an example of that, a very small example of that. And I think it's fascinating.
Interesting. Yeah.
So after that, there's a very quick scene where they're walking together and they walk through this forest, a bamboo forest. And he mentions Yoda. He says, Yoda was small like you, but he had a huge heart. And then he explains that he talked to me about size mattering not. And they explained, Yoda talked in riddles. I've never heard in canon someone say that I can remember Yoda talked in riddles. You always kind of think, well, it's backwards, thinking it's like a formal older thing, or no one ever really know. But he says Yoda talked in riddles. And then after that, we see Order 66 through Grogu's eyes, and you just think to yourself, yet again, my cup as runneth over. I didn't know when or if I would ever see this. And seeing it like this and done so beautifully and so hauntingly, it's just something that really stuck with me.
It was such a... I didn't know what I was going to see when Luke puts his hand in and said, would you like to see your past? And it doesn't really give Grogu a chance to respond, although Grogu doesn't verbally respond.
He flinches, but he also kind of puts his head up too.
Yes, I agree. And yeah, when we see Order 66, so something that really jumped out at me in this episode that started here is there's something about, and I just rewatched all the Mandalorian season 1 and season 2 episodes, and now I wish I could remember if I didn't note this then, but in this episode with Grogu, I noted how much we see through the reflection of Grogu's eyes when they're showing that battle with the clones, and he has 3 Jedi protectors in front of him, and who knows who else is down that hall or corridor with him. But much of that battle is seen while with us looking at Grogu, but we can see the battle through the reflection of his eyes. We can see the laser bolts firing in his eyes and wonder as we see him in so many different ways. I mean, this almost, I don't know that this felt dangerous necessarily to Grogu at that moment. I couldn't really tell, except in that last shot of him when after the Jedi had perished and the clones were starting to run down the corridors. The first time we really saw fear in his eyes. Before that, I felt like it was just wonder in Grogu's eyes. But that was again an unexpected moment of this episode where we see a little bit, and I kind of peeked at my family when we were there watching that right before when he says, "Would you like to see what happened, or would you like to remember? Would you like to remember?" Yeah. And I looked, and everybody in my family was entranced with the television. And that was as a dad, Star Wars fan, looking at my family, just completely enthralled by this moment of the story because they know how important that is, even as just casual viewers of it. But can I say right before that, it wasn't necessarily, I don't think, intentionally intended to be comic relief, but the way in which Luke and Grogu walk and stroll together, where Luke uses the Force to bring Grogu a little forward, and then walks and then carries him forward. That was great. I loved that.
It was adorable, and also Grogu loved it.
It's relationship. You see, because the concern was, at the end of The Mandalorian season 2 was, can Grogu make that separation from the Mandalore, from Din Djarin? And so here we see that Luke and Grogu have this sort of moment, not moment, but like this tradition of when they go for a walk. This is how Grogu keeps up. And so I just thought that was such a sweet moment.
I'm glad you brought it up. It's almost like a swing, like a force swing.
Yeah.
You know, they didn't build the androids were not building a playground. They built a bench, but they didn't build swing, so he's able to do that.
It's like when you walk with your children, with your wife or your partner, and you take the hands of the children, you swing them forward and backwards. It was just like that.
Exactly. Luke is interesting in this episode because he's stoic. He's extraordinarily patient. And you can also tell that he's a little nervous. I mean, he's got a little bit of stage fright about being an instructor, which we see later, but we'll get to that in a minute. He says to Grogu, the galaxy is a dangerous place, but so I can teach you to protect yourself. As a teacher and a parent, I don't necessarily like that idea of teaching people to be afraid. Isn't that antithetical to the idea of the Force and the light side as well? But it's not really necessarily telling him to be afraid. I think he's trying to sell Grogu a product. Not a product, but as the Force is a product, but more like, I can tell that your heart isn't in it. He does say that later. He's trying to convince him why he needs the Force. It's an interesting tactic. I can't say I would have done it any differently, especially if I lived in a fictional universe and it was Star Wars and I was Luke Skywalker. But I do think it's at least worth pointing out.
I noted that line as well. It didn't seem consistent in my mind, but I'm glad, once again, these conversations are so good because I hadn't thought of that idea that at this point Luke recognizes that Grogu is still being resistant. Mm-hmm. As a viewer of the show to this point, I can't say that I've seen anywhere where Grogu is necessarily resistant to anything Luke is doing. He's just being a kid and watching a frog jump across. But that line makes a lot more sense now in hindsight, because as you said in that conversation with Ahsoka later on, he says, he's reluctant or what's the language he uses to describe Grogu's feelings toward the Force.
When he says that he's not convinced that his heart is in it. Yeah, but sometimes I wonder if his heart is in it.
That's heart is in it. Yes. Yeah. So after the fact, going back to this moment, that line makes a lot of sense because he is trying to sell something. It's not sell. He's trying to persuade him. As a parent often does to a child, you try to persuade them of what's best for them because you're the adult, they're the child.
That's right.
And so that makes a lot of sense now because that didn't seem like a line of the Jedi. I'm teaching you to protect yourself in a dangerous universe or galaxy.
Right.
So
and
good call.
Oh yeah, thanks. And it's interesting too that even though Grogu is a kid and like almost an infant, sometimes he's not an infant. So it's a very interesting challenge to create this character, to write this character, and interact with this character. But Luke gets it. So let's go to one major thing before we do a break. I've still got like 10 more things I want to talk about before we
There's a
break
lot
down this episode. There is a lot. But he wakes up from his nap, the Mandalorian does, like he grabs his pistol, and there we have Lady Tano herself, Ahsoka Tano. I see you shaking your head. Whoa. Is this the biggest surprise? Is this no, actually no. There's one bigger.
No, there's a bigger surprise.
This was crazy to me.
I know. This was a big enough surprise for one episode, and we get hit with two later on, but this was so it was so heartwarming. It was like a best friend who knocks on the door after being gone and you didn't know they were coming back. It was such a, like, I don't know how else to say it. It was just a heartwarming moment. And to see Din Djarin's reaction to her, and I don't know how far you want to go, but the discourse between the two of them, you realize how, not that I question this, but you realize how wise Ahsoka is
Mm-hmm.
through this conversation they have. And she really challenges him and recognizes that he's a novice in this whole thing. He's in Rome and he's not doing what the Romans do. And so she challenges him lots of different ways. But I'll let you talk about your reaction to her being there, and we can go into that a little bit more.
Yet another gasp. I'm surprised someone didn't try to give me CPR. The amount of times I gasped in this episode. Seeing her, and it's Rosario Dawson. It's taken me well over a year, but now I'm all in with Rosario Dawson as Ahsoka Tano. All in. Yeah. So I'm glad about that. But of course, Ashley will still always be Ahsoka to me. But I'm very at peace with this now because of the portrayal of the grace that she exudes through this character, who we've said, you and I, and many have said many times, one of our favorite characters in all of fiction, Ahsoka Tano.
Yeah,
absolutely, just exquisite. But when she says right away, what brings you here? She says, "I'm an old friend of the family." Your fireworks explode in your chest because of her connection with Anakin Skywalker, who was her Jedi master.
Yeah.
So he says, "I want to go see the kid. I want to see Grogu." Again, the charm in the Mandalorian's voice. He's much more gregarious than I think we ever would have dreamed at the beginning of season 1. So she says, "Let's go take a walk." She talks to him about attachments. Mandalorian. This whole episode is an example of a parent letting go of their child as they go off to boarding school, or they go off to college, or they go off to high school, or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But he's I just want to make sure that Grogu is safe. And she says, and she kind of puts her hands together, and she breaks character a little bit, not as an actor, but just like Ahsoka herself is more like, even she's enthralled by Luke Skywalker. And you can tell because she puts her hands together and she expands them and she says, "There's no place in the galaxy safer than with Luke Skywalker." Mm-hmm. And that makes me so like I'm high-fiving the kid in me so hard when that happens. She says, "Grogu's got a choice." And, it's tricky because she says, "Are you doing this for Grogu? Or are you doing this for yourself?" And that, as a parent, that's got to hit you, because
absolutely, how
often do we do things sometimes when ostensibly it's for our kids, but really it's for us and our relationship with our kids, and almost selfishly. I mean, that's human. Look, I'm as guilty of that as anybody. I'm a parent of 3 boys, and I understand that emotion. That really spoke to me. So he says, "Well, Grogu's a foundling," and Ahsoka says, "Yeah, or maybe Grogu's a Padawan." Then the Mandalorian does something I think really smart. He says, "Either way, this armor will protect him," which means to me, look, we can call him whatever he wants. I want him to choose, of course, but I just want him to be safe. He can call himself whatever he wants. He can join Jedi or Mandalorian or whatever he wants to do. I want him to be safe. And then it becomes a situation where Ahsoka says, "If he sees you, it will only make things more difficult for him." The Mandalorian thinks of that. He looks up at Grogu and Luke way in the distance, and he turns around without a fuss and walks away. Again, showing us the superior mindfulness of this character, the impossibly wonderful inner strength that he has, and why he is the best dad in Star Wars, in the history of Star Wars.
Wow. This one really hit me hard. This moment, when Ahsoka walks him to that spot where they can see across, they can see the two of them up on the hill, and you see Luke lean over and, interact with Grogu in some way, taps him on the head or something. And again, we've said this so many times through the seasons 1 and 2 of The Mandalorian into these episodes, where Pedro Pascal is an actor without using facial expressions, but communicating non-verbally through a helmet. He's so good. He is so good. And when he looks up there and they the camera's back and forth, but when they, on one particular moment, they come to him, and he says, "But I've come so far." Oh, Dan, I have these moments where I see this, and I see this moment, and I'm like, one of my girls aren't too far away from college, and you've had one there, and you've got one in there now. And I just have this imagination in my head where I travel so far to see my daughter at the college, and for one reason or not, I'm like, she's out of reach. And that's where he is right now. And
scary.
And then he says, what are his last words? Make sure he's safe, or
I think I think it's just either way the armor will protect him, and then she says if he sees you, and then he doesn't say anything.
Yeah, and then he just turns and walks away
with his head held high.
Yes,
not in a proud way, but just in like a resolute peace.
Yeah, and just wow, what a powerful scene. And I was just thinking, and I don't have any idea what this means, but there's something about that this idea that the Mandalorian comes here, and like I said, he's out of his element, and he's led twice. He's led by R2 to the temple being built, and he's told this, basically he sleeps. He awakens to Ahsoka, and Ahsoka leads him, but never to his actual goal. I have no idea what that means, but there just seems like there's something meaningful to being led twice, and he has sleep in between. I don't know what it is.
Is it a short rest or a long rest?
That would be a short rest. Yeah, he didn't gain any full spells back on that one.
Yeah. But it is nice with the. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's almost like he has a mini journey to his discovery of like letting Grogu go, but leaving a little bit of himself with the shirt armor.
And I think it's so important that the first time Grogu and the Mandalorian and Ahsoka Tano met, the planet was dark and dingy and rocky and foggy and hazy. Here it's beautiful and lush and green and sunny and clear. That's another example of where they are internally from one to the next.
Oh, love that. Yes. Nice.
So let's go ahead and take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk about Grogu doing some training. An important conversation between two characters I never thought would talk. And then the reveal. I'm not going to. Yeah, we'll get to that. This is Coffee with Kenobi.
This is Vanessa Marshall, and you're listening to Coffee with Kenobi.
We're back talking about this incredible episode, the 6th chapter in the book of Boba Fett, From the Desert Comes a Stranger. So this is where we get to see the training sequence, an extended training sequence, without a meat locker or Rocky Balboa doing sit-ups on a balcony, but still pretty cool, but fun. Grogu has to learn to jump. I'll just throw a bunch of things at him. We'll talk about him. Yep. Luke says, "Don't try, do it." A nice variation, without riddles. And then Luke was wearing a backpack. This time, not with Yoda, but with Grogu. And I just love the bookmark of he is young. He wears a backpack with being taught. Now he's wearing a backpack with the same species of creature. But Luke is the teacher. Mm-hmm. That's so good. I really like so much of that. My handwriting is so bad because I wrote so much stuff down while I was writing this. But basically, there's a moment where he climbs the top of this bamboo that I want to talk about, and then something with a training remote. So there's a lot to talk about. I'll let you take it any order you want or whatever you want to talk about.
Yeah, it's just a couple of highlights on this. I mean, the whole thing was a highlight. The whole scene was there. We get some classic Star Wars music in this sequence. this might have been what made me think, gee, this takes me back. It takes me so far back into Star Wars lore. And it's it has that visual flashback to Dagobah. But some highlights of the training for me and my family are the moment when Luke says jump. We get to see Grogu do a little doop. And really, that's all you can give me. That was so Luke. That was so Luke Skywalker or Mark Hamill or something. But it was all Luke Skywalker. And I really appreciated the layman's use of try, do that. I was like, that's exactly what that meant. Thank you, Luke Skywalker, for making that simple for me to understand. So I really enjoyed that when he runs through the forest was wonderful. And was it in this sequence where they've paused on the run and they see the Mandalorian ship take off?
Yes.
And Grogu has
the very, very beginning. He held his hand out.
Yeah, and he holds his hand out, and you just oh, geez. Anyway, it's like I can just imagine it back in childhood, being at camp, someplace I'm gonna have so much fun and learn so much, and I watch my parents drive away. Anyway, but so that, and then I think the other part of this whole training that I thoroughly enjoyed was the ball. When he introduces him to the, what is that calling? And the training remote, and Grogu tries rolling it like a child. It just
so cute.
Made me. No, that's not how that works.
Yeah.
and then when it shoots him and he jumps back and falls down, that got lots of response from my family. And I said, just wait. And Grogu learns very quickly. Do we want to talk? Are we going to save the conversation between Luke and Ahsoka at the end of this training sequence for reactions? Yeah. Okay. So just the way he acclimates to the training with the probe and leaps across the rocks and all of that was just nice to see. And I like to believe in my mind that this all didn't happen on the same day, but maybe it did. That he's done some of this training in advance, that it wasn't immediate that it happened. But still, the concern Din Djarin has is he okay and is he safe? We can confirm for him now that, if we saw Din Djarin on the street, we could say, hey, Grogu's in good hands, because that's what we just saw. It was cute. It brought back wonderful memories and flashbacks to the past, and we can see that Grogu is growing. Not coming of age yet, but growing.
Right. No, for sure. Well said. Well said. So the thing that stands out to me about this is because I like teaching The Hobbit. There is a beautiful scene in the Flies and Spiders chapter. I think it's chapter 9. I don't remember exactly, but I think it's chapter 9, 8 or 9. And there's a moment where Bilbo has to climb the top of this tree, and they're in this dark, dingy forest. And when he gets to the top, he looks around at the horizon and he sees butterflies and the lush greens and the sunlight. And there's just this moment that I've always loved where Tolkien is clearly telling us, you know what? We're all connected. This is nature. Things aren't as bad as they seem. There's a lot of life. And it happens here. Like, I would be shocked if it just didn't somehow inspire Filoni and Favreau. I don't know if it did, but to me, there was just almost a 1-1. When he climbs up there, he says, a wide world exists in balance. Feel the force around you. When he says that, the wind starts to blow, and they both close their eyes, and the wind hits their faces. He says, through the force, you will find balance as well. And then we get the sequence of Grogu standing on that little, the dock, basically. And then we watched Luke doing saber forms, which I thought was cool. We've seen Rey do that in The Last Jedi, but that was super cool. The training remote. And then when Grogu falls down, he gets blasted by the remote. I'm like, oh. And Mason goes, it's all right, Dad. It's not really a blaster. I'm like, that's true. It's a stun. Or it's not even that. It's just it shocked him. But Grogu jumps up and coos. Like, he's not upset. He's not traumatized. Grogu's tough, and he's in it to win it, man. And Luke says, "Get up, always get back up." And that, I feel like that's sort of a modern world thing to say, but no less important. Like the great moment at the end of Captain Marvel when Brie Larson's Captain Marvel stands up. So I like so much about that, seeing them train together, seeing Grogu not only learn to jump, but do some hardcore flips with grace. Like, he's clearly done it before. And then now let's switch to the scene. Look, besides the ending part, when I realized that Ahsoka Tano, like, you hope it's going to happen. I even said before this happened, I said to Mason, I hope they don't do this to me where I'm so close to seeing Luke Skywalker and Ahsoka Tano talk to each other. I please deliver. And it happens. Ahsoka Tano and Luke Skywalker, Mark Hamill, Luke Skywalker, are looking at each other and talking and smiling. And that's like why I said I got so many Star Wars cavities. There was so much sweetness and so much wonderful that I just couldn't contain it. What did you think about seeing these two together, and talk about anything in their conversation that stands out to you? There's a lot of great stuff here.
Yeah, I was so excited for this to happen, and thought that it legitimately might not. Because it was as likely that she would leave when Din Djarin left. And so when
or that they weren't even on the same planet at first, I thought, until they see them all together.
Oh, yeah, right. So, and apparently they've had conversations before that we haven't seen. So that was, to me, that was interesting, and that there is a history, maybe just briefly, but there is a history between the two of them, because they talk knowingly. I think the most notable thing for me out of this conversation, well, two things. One is Luke, when he is instructing, is very confident. He uses his knowledge that he learns from Yoda in giving that to Grogu. He uses his lines, simplifies them to Wade, does not speak in riddles like Yoda did. But when she shows up and he has a conversation with her, I wondered what the relationship would be like, because he's a powerful Jedi, but he instantly kind of becomes, do you think I'm doing the right thing? I sense, his heart's not. He like questions her in as if he doesn't know what he's doing, which I thought was interesting. So what that did for me with their relationship was, like, I had to really stop and think, oh, yeah, Ahsoka was the Padawan of Anakin Skywalker. Anakin Skywalker happens to be Luke's father. And so, like, lots of stuff just was running through my head as they had that conversation. And then it took me back to that line when she says part of the family. Then I was like, oh yeah, that's when that line hit me. But it was interesting that they have a mutual respect. Neither one of them acted or seemed higher than the other. Luke sought her advice. In fact, if anything, I felt like Luke acted like she was more the superior, especially at the end when he says, "Will I see you again?" As if he desires to have her, just Jedi companionship for mentoring and discussing, and have someone else to talk about, the ways of the Force and training and things like that. And so I found their relationship to be really interesting. I don't know that I had an expectation of what that might be if it ever happened, but it seemed pretty clear to me.
Yeah, no, that I'm glad you mentioned that, because I think the dynamic between the two of them is very important. Again, just seeing them together, seeing them interact meant the world to me. It was great. It was like two of my favorite characters, and seemingly separate timelines suddenly not separate at all.
Yeah.
And I do want to talk about Luke and seeing him there and what he looked like, but we'll maybe say that for the end. But so when they're chatting and they're watching Grogu, you're doing a great job teaching him. And Luke says, it's more like he's remembering than I'm actually teaching him anything. So there is some humility there. Maybe not necessarily in that line, but there's an overall vibe of a little bit of insecurity. And I like that a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Again, we see that to me, that is through The Last Jedi, which will happen later in Luke's life. The fact that Luke is frustrated with a lot of things and how they've happened, and the hubris of the Jedi. And I think what he really means is the hubris of himself. Mm-hmm. And then we see, sometimes hubris is there because it's actually insecurity in disguise. Sometimes that happens. And just because, you and I know this, just because you're good at something doesn't mean you're good at teaching it. Now, from what I've seen, Luke is an excellent teacher. He's great. Everything he says, the way he does it, his patience, he seems like a wonderful teacher to me. But I like the fact that there's a little bit of doubt there because that makes him more human. And again, that's, to me, the more human Luke is, the more compelling Luke is. Ahsoka says sometimes the student guides the master. And this is when Luke says, sometimes I wonder if his heart is in it. And then Ahsoka says that the second thing that's like the home run of home runs, so much like your father.
Yeah.
And Luke just looks at her and he smiles. Not with like regret or contempt, but just peace. Mm-hmm. Luke has made peace with his Vader thing, which of course he did. When they leave, he says, I'm not sure what to do. She says, trust your instincts. And he says, will I see you again? And she says, perhaps. There's a lot to unpack just in those couple of lines of dialogue. To me, I think we need to make something really, really clear. To me, this is my opinion. I think it's disingenuous to think that there's not a dynamic here that is different. Ahsoka Tano is a superior Jedi to Luke Skywalker. It is silly. To me, it's silly to think otherwise. Ahsoka Tano was trained to be a Jedi from birth. She was trained by Anakin Skywalker, Yoda, Obi-Wan Kenobi. Her entire life. She survived Order 66 and the Jedi Purge. She's been trained with a lightsaber her entire life. Comparatively speaking, Luke Skywalker has done it. A New Hope to The Empire Strikes Back is 3 years. And then Empire to Jedi is 1 year. So that's 4 years. And then 4 years between this and The Mandalorian is about 5 or 6 years, depending on how much time has happened between season 1 of Mandalorian and Book of Boba Fett. So 7-8 years, that's very different. So experience-wise and knowledge-wise, Ahsoka has the edge. It's unquestionable. Now, who's more powerful? I also think that is unquestionable. It's Luke Skywalker. Of course it's Luke Skywalker. Okay. That's why she says there's nowhere safer in the galaxy than with Luke Skywalker. Luke is the most powerful Jedi, period. Maybe even more than Anakin. I feel very comfortable saying that. But when it comes to experience and knowledge, it has to be Ahsoka. And you see him deferring to her. They both defer to each other. And I think that affirms sort of my belief. She defers to him as far as his power, his abilities, the fact that he is the person to teach Grogu. Plus, as we said earlier, and we didn't talk about, Grogu chose Luke. Grogu didn't want to be taught by Ahsoka. She respected his choice. But he defers to her when it comes to wisdom and knowing what to do. She is somewhat of a mentor to him, and she should be because of her role in the Jedi hierarchy and the fact that she worked under Anakin Skywalker. And that respect and that mutual admiration, and almost when he says, well, I see you again, the way it's delivered, the way it's portrayed there, it's almost a little bit of like attachment of his own. And I don't mean romantically necessarily, although I'm sure that will be part of the discourse. I don't know that I see that per se. It's more like, I admire the heck out of you. You're super cool. I could learn a lot from you. Can you stick around? So again, a lot to unpack.
I mean, it could also just be, you knew my father before he was Darth Vader.
Yes.
Maybe he wants more conversation about that. I also think about, Luke knew Obi-Wan at the end of his life. And, Ahsoka might want to know about that. There's so much crossover that the two of them have that would be meaningful to both of them. That makes sense why Luke would have an interest in her being around. Plus, as you mentioned, and it was well said on the differences between the two of them. Power, most certainly, I personally when you were talking about experience in Ahsoka, I kept thinking, but Luke, in my mind, is much more powerful than Ahsoka. So the way you stated that makes complete sense to me. Of course, it's always debatable, but that made a lot of sense to me. There's something else I was going to say about that. Well, I guess we can move on because I can't think of what it was. If I think of it, I will mention it. Yeah.
Please do. So then they're gone, and then we go back to Mando, and there's a part of me that thinks, well, okay, we're done with Luke and Grogu for now, I would think. Mm-hmm. So Mando goes back to Tatooine. They've got their muscle, they've got a plan. They all get together. Seeing Black Chrysanthemum and the Mandalorian in the same room, it gives me joy beyond belief as well. Again, the whole thing was like a love letter. Mm-hmm. I joked earlier about. So he's got to go, says, we need soldiers. We need foot soldiers. And he says, I think I can help with that. He goes back to Cobb Vanth. On the way there, we see the sandcrawler with the crate dragon skull on top. How in the heck did those furry little critters get that thing on top of there? We'll never know. But that was great fun.
They have a crane and pulley system.
Exactly. Well, of course. Yes, they're smart. And so then he goes back and he sees Cobb Vanth, the deputy there. He's very striking and very familiar to me, and I don't really know why. Maybe it's the actor, I don't know, but I like the role that he played.
The deputy?
The deputy.
Yeah. Okay.
When Cobb Vanth walks out and sees the Mando, the rapport between the two of them is really pretty cool. I like that he says, I haven't seen you. How are you? And he legitimately means it. And he says, I'm more careful. I'm more careful. And he says, answer. It is a great answer. And he says, what about your little friend? He returned to his people. And he says, I guess we both lost something we were fond of. I found that to be very touching. Anything about this conversation or the recruitment pitch in the actual canteen itself that you want to discuss?
Yeah. Well, I wanted to ask a question. What do you make of Cobb Vanth's interest in the Naboo starfighter? He seems so interested in that. I thought, did I miss something from somewhere in Cobb Vanth's story that he has or owns, or he's
it's just a classic throwback to the Galactic Republic. He hasn't seen that. No one's seen that for a really long time, right? Yeah,
so cool. I loved his interest. Yeah. I was hoping maybe some lore was going to come out of that.
No, I think that's just fun. It's sort of an acknowledgement of the time that has passed. It's an antique. It's like having a '57 Chevy.
Yeah. Right, exactly. So yeah, he takes him to the tavern and he has the conversation with him about the recruitment of soldiers because of spice. And we know that Cobb Vanth has seen this potential conflict coming. So I was a little surprised when he seemed a bit reluctant with it. And then the bartender tosses in, it's Freetown now. And which I think is what they call it in the Aftermath series.
I was glad about that. On Facebook Live earlier this week, I was calling it Mos Pelgo, and some people said, well, isn't it called Freetown? And I said, well, I think it's a different place. Maybe not. It wasn't quite sure if it was the same. But now this is where we find out, you know what? They have changed the name. It is the same place, but they've changed it to Freetown. So it was pretty cool that our Facebook Live friends were pointing that out, and then it came to fruition right away.
Yeah, free from the dragon, free from the threat of Tusken Raiders. I mean, they've probably felt, a off of their shoulders for that name change. Although personally, I like Mos Pelgo better. It sounds like a Tatooine, village, but hey, it's their village, not mine. But he also tosses in that we don't want. I forget what the bartender says exactly, but he's like, we don't want any of that trouble.
That's that's city folk fight.
That's city folk fight. Yep. And so they lower their voices slightly. The deputies off in the distance with the barkeep, whispering back and forth. And essentially Cobb Vanth says, see what I can do. And I love the moment where he says, we're square. Yeah. And Mando says, yeah, we're square. I just thought that was a very gentleman kind of way of establishing. It also feels, it goes back to that Western, genre of like, Yeah, I'm good with you. You're good with me. Okay, we're all good. No one's gonna pull their blasters here. And it showed camaraderie and a connection between the two of them. So these are two characters that are just, even though we spend a lot more time with Mandalorian than Cobb Vanth, I just love these two characters.
At the end, it shows how much mutual respect they have for each other, because in any other environment, probably this wouldn't have worked. But he says, I just didn't figure you're not the kind to back down from bullies. And he says that he's like poking the bear with playfully, but also serious.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And then Cobb Vanth in his charming manner says, that's the thing, you may know, that big smile lets you get away with anything. What a great line. What a terrific line. So, it says things are tough, but I'll see what I can do. Mandalorian flies away. And then, Tom, yet again, in the world of Star Wars, thank you, Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau, something happens that I never, ever, ever thought I would see in a live-action Star Wars.
How many shots to the distance did they have to do before you rose out of your seat like I did?
Okay. So the first thing I did, as soon as he flies away, suddenly the literally a beautiful metaphor. There's a wind of change. This is the second time we've seen wind effectively used in the story, but because it's a change. This is a wind of change. This is a bad thing. It's spinning around the weather vane, Mos Pelgo or Freetown style, and you hear a noise, and you look up in the distance, and you see someone with a trench coat and a hat. Now it's far away. Away. But in my mind, I said, I wish Mason and I were joking that I just need to record myself when we're watching this episode, because the weird things I just exclaimed. And I said, it's got to be him. I think that's him. And then I start confusing the name Cobb Vanth with Cad Bane. And so the second time they show him, I went from being about 60% sure to 90% sure. And then they show the back of his boots, 99% sure. And then you hear Corey Burton's voice, and you say, holy cow, holy cow, holy cow, holy cow. That is Cad Bane. And then that goes away, and you think, holy crap, he's going to die. No one's going to outdraw him. Tell me what you thought, because I was like, this was like on Facebook Live. Here's a teaser for everybody when you tune in Monday at 7:00 p.m. Central Standard Time. This is my number one moment from a terrific episode. Seeing him and knowing he's been my favorite bounty hunter before I met the Mandalorian.
Oh, I mean, I didn't see it coming. I don't know. I don't know if there was stuff out there that said that this was going to happen or not, or
no idea.
It felt like, I mean, it was brand new to me.
Same here.
And it took the third shot. It was, I was 0%, 0%, back of the boots. I stood with my arms in the air, and I was like, that's Cad Bane. That changes everything for this moment. Like the hope that he's going to bring, that he's going to get people to come and help out Boba Fett. I mean, it's a domino effect, what Cad Bane means to this story. And you hear the voice, and he doesn't lift his hat, and he never said, he says, I'm Cobb Vanth, who's asking, and he doesn't answer. Oh my goodness. And can I just say, he is horrifying.
Yes.
In live action. He is, when he lifts his, and you see the red eyes, and just that, what's creepy to me that I don't get in the animation is the teeth and the lack of a nose. It's just scary. And the tubes coming into his like neck, cheek area. Oh my goodness. But it's so threatening. And you can feel the tension in, I forget the actor's name for Cobb. It's Oliphant, but it's what's his first
Timothy
name?
Oliphant.
Timothy Oliphant. His acting here is top notch, because as confident as he is, you definitely sense fear in him. I don't know if he knows who Cad Bane is. I didn't catch anything that showed a recognition to it when he lifted his head, but you definitely sense the tension and a slight bit of fear. However, I don't know. I still think it is out there who's the faster droid, because he was clearly distracted by his overactive, I don't know what he is. Is he overprotective? Is he a dope? Is he what? The deputy. And so what a moment. What a Star Wars moment.
What a show, and a showdown that the reason it changes everything, besides the fact that if this is who they've hired, then you actually, it's hard to find a threat that you think, oh gosh, they would be the Mandalorian or Boba Fett or Chris Hansen are in trouble. It's hard to find that doesn't involve a lightsaber. Then you see Cad Bane and you think, never mind.
Yep.
Never mind.
Yep.
Never mind. Remember what he did to the Bad Batch. So yeah, that the reason it changes everything, though, to me, besides that, is if Cad Bane can show up in live action, anything is possible. Any character from a comic book, from Rebels, from the Clone Wars, from a novel, they can show up in Star Wars live action. My hands are actually tingling right now. They're actually tingling because I'm so excited about what that means. That is it's another breathtaking moment. This is why, and I've said this, I don't know if I said this on the show or not, but no, I did at the beginning. This is why this episode is my favorite 1 hour of television of any show ever. Just because the emotions I felt, the constant highs and the shock and the smiles and what it all means. Now, none of this can happen without the buildup of 40 plus years of Star Wars and the mythology and all the different ways we've consumed Star Wars. But these payoffs are like nothing else. He says, don't stick your nose in other people's business or something like that. And he says, Cobb says, is that friendly advice or threat?
Oh,
there's so much dudeness, so much Western vernacular. And then Boba, Cad Bane says with contempt and venom spitting out of his vocal cords, he says, Boba Fett is a cold-blooded killer who worked with the Empire. So then you start to think, does he hate the Empire too? Did the Empire do something to him? Maybe they put a crank in his business, I would think. Or is he just touting the company line because the Pikes have paid him well? He says, you should have given up your armor. He's distracted. It's as good as I think Cobb Vanth is, and we see the beginning of the episode, I still don't think anybody's outdrawing Cad Bane. You're right, though. The distraction is there. But that is a moment, Tom, that, again, another home run of a home run of a home run moment in Star Wars.
Grand slam. There's some things you said I wanted to talk about Cad Bane and his venom for Boba Fett. I have to wonder. I don't feel like he's buying the line, he's taking the payment from the Pikes, and that's what this is about. I feel like personal. That's a fringe benefit. This is a personal vendetta.
I think so too. And
I cannot think back in the Clone Wars that young Boba Fett did anything to. So there's a story somewhere. But Cad Bane also was not a part of that Darth Vader hiring to capture Han Solo.
Yeah.
And so maybe he felt slighted there. Who knows?
It could be.
Who knows what the story is? And hopefully there's a story out there to be told somewhere about Cad Bane, because he is one of the most compelling bounty hunters out there. And not only did we see him in Clone Wars, but then, like you said, in the Bad Batch, he was incredible. And I just go back to the Clone Wars. Cad Bane captured Obi-Wan, Anakin, and Padme. Remember he had the, I don't remember the episode or anything, but he captured them. I mean, he is conniving. He is manipulative. He outplans just about everybody on top of his gunslinging skills.
Yep.
And if there's a place, I mean, I can't wait to see a gunslinging scene with Mandalorian, Boba Fett, maybe Cobb Vanth. I don't know if he's dead or not. They ran to him as if he could be saved. I don't know. But the Mandalorian, Boba Fett, Fennec Shand facing off against Cad Bane, that's going to be a shootout of the ages.
Get the popcorn,
if
kids.
It happens. That's right. Get the popcorn.
Sure. So the only other thing after this, there's only two moments. One is brief but important. The other one is brief but insanely important. So we have a quick viewing of them of a couple of Pikes walking into the mayor's place. They put down their Camtono, and it's a bomb. I mean, this is a classic mob technique. They explode it, and all of a sudden you're like, well, so much for Max Rebo's return. Gosh.
Okay, I wish I'd have taken that direction than the innocent lives.
No, I thought of that first. It's like this is fierce. These guys mean business. It's all out war now, and it's pretty scary.
Yeah, it was to me, that was horrifying, and the family was shaken by that. It just felt very real.
Mm-hmm. It did. It was probably the most realistic thing in the entire episode. That part. Mm-hmm. It's an act of terrorism. It's an act of war. It's scary. But at the end, we get another fantastic cliffhanger. Luke and Grogu are in the hut, and there's a red blanket laying down between the two of them. And on one side, you've got the small wooden box. On the other side, you've got what we know is the Beskar for Grogu himself. So Luke says, I'm going to let you choose. Here's this, and he shows him this, and the D&D player knew had to be just thrilled beyond belief. I thought of you when I saw that. Yeah, exactly. And then, or here's this, and he turns on a small green lightsaber, and I was like, no way. And Mason and I high five. And I'm like, did he build this for Grogu? That would be, that's not what the Jedi do, but who cares? And then you're like, no, wait, this belonged to Master Yoda. And you think, what? He's going to have Yoda's lightsaber? So this is what he says. You can take the armor and return to the Mandalorian. You will be giving in to attachment to those you love and forsaking the ways of the Jedi. So he's clearly stacking the deck here, but given the options. But if you're a Jedi, you'll get this lightsaber of Master Yoda. You'll be my first student. You will be a great Jedi. You may never see the Mandalorian again, but a short time in life for you is a lifetime for other people. What are you going to choose? He looks at both, stands up, looks at the camera, and it's over. So what do you think about the choice? And another thing, I've been hinting around to this throughout the episode, but is it fair to make someone Grogu's age make that choice? Is he old enough and mature enough to make that choice? He seems old enough to jump and flip, but does that make you mature enough to do it? I don't know. It seems...
I thought it was very challenging for Grogu can't even talk yet.
No,
and maybe he won't, but he seems to understand when you talk to him. But he still is very childlike. He wants to play with the ball on the shifter on the Razor Crest. He wants to take the probe, droid and roll it around. So he's still very childlike, And so I had the same thought that, boy, this doesn't seem very fair. But what it did for me as a viewer of the show was, and we've talked about this, and it's becoming more and more present in the way I think about this show. Well, not about the show, but about the show. I'm kind of developing my idea right now here as I'm talking, but this is where I am with it. Is we have. Well, the show has presented to us three very deep cultures. One of them they give us lots of lore on, and that is the lore of the Mandalorian. We've gotten so much lore from them between the Mandalorian season 1 and 2, and then the last episode where the armorer tells us so much information about the Night of 1,000 Tears, clear back to 10,000 years, and the creator of the Darksaber, and all, we get all of that. And so we juxtapose that with the culture of the Jedi. And one is about camaraderie and belonging, and the other is about giving up, things that you, giving up, what is it? Belongings and possessions,
attachment, yeah.
and pledging yourself to the Force. And we also have the lore and the culture of the Tusken Raiders that we learned a lot about in this episode. And Boba Fett is trying to create his own culture. So I don't know how those all come together, but that is where my mind is right now with this. And that's where I see that's the choice that Grogu is given. He's given, you can go with the Mandalorian, be protected in the Mandalorian ways with this possession. And it's, and you can do that. That's fine. Or you can take Yoda's lightsaber. And I wonder, we haven't really had any discussion in the show, or I don't think we've talked about it here on this show, but that Grogu would remember or would have been with Yoda, right? Doesn't Ahsoka say when they first meet on that planet in the Mandalorian, doesn't she say that he knew Yoda?
Someone like him, yeah.
Someone like him.
It seems reasonable to assume that they would have interacted or with Yoda. It seems crazy that they wouldn't, but there's no official recognition, and they both, Ahsoka and Luke, talk to him about. But if he's alive during Order 66, well, obviously we know where Yoda is, but Yoda's on another planet, so who knows how long Grogu's been in that temple?
Right.
So Yoda was on Kashyyyk, and then he went to Coruscant to fight the Emperor.
Yeah. So I mean, it's a very unfair feeling situation he's put Grogu into, but at the same time,
makes sense. Yeah,
and maybe the Mandalorian's presence pushed it. I mean, Luke could have held on to that, but maybe he senses in Grogu that he saw the ship and he saw the ship take off, and I don't know. But man, when he pulls out Yoda's lightsaber and ignites it and says, "This is the lightsaber of Master Yoda," I don't know what caused it inside of me, if it's just the full emotion of the entire episode and everything that has happened in this episode, but like it became sort of emotional to me. Like holy cow, this is an artifact. This is like a legendary artifact that he's presenting here, and Luke has been carrying with him. And so, my goodness, now I wonder what happens with Yoda's lightsaber. What's Grogu going to decide? And what a just a drop off the cliff when they went back to the credits. I mean, I thought last episode's end credits came fast and like hard. Oh, man.
Perfection. Again, absolute perfection. You really can't ask for much more. I don't. This episode had so many wonderful things, connecting so many parts of the galaxy and bringing so many parts of Star Wars that we love together and tying it up in a nice little bow, but still leaving you questioning and wanting more. It's absolutely exceptional. I mean, I don't think it's a fair choice, but I also think it's a sound, important choice, because it, just like he says early in the episode, don't try, do it. So this is basically him saying, Grogu, if you want to choose, buddy, you go ahead. You can leave. That's cool. But if you stay, this is what you want. And of course, I'm going to stack to that because I want you to stay, because I see your potential, and you'll be a great first student to have. So it's the only choice. It's very unfair, but still, so is the Jedi notion of attachment. I'm still hoping that Luke will suddenly be like, you know what, this attachment thing, this didn't work out so well for previous generations. So maybe we should try a different path. And I feel like we kind of see that with Luke in Return of the Jedi with his friends and stuff like that. So again, you can't really judge the book until you've read all the chapters, and we haven't read all the chapters. The only other thing I want to say before we close this out is seeing Luke repeatedly. I spent half the episode scratching my head saying, who is this actor? who is this actor? And Mason says, well, it's probably just the same computer stuff they did for season 2. And apparently it is. I don't know. At the time of this recording, I don't know. It even has Mark Hamill's name at the end. The voice sounded stronger and clearer than season 2 of Mando, which I thought was excellent, by the way. The CGI looks great. Sometimes it looks like it's dull, but it still looks like Mark Hamill. It was eerie and uncanny. And you just start to believe that, okay, Luke Skywalker is just going to be regular. We're just going to see him around. We're going to see him, the image of Mark Hamill. So however they did this, however the wizardry of Ilum and Lucasfilm, whatever it was, my jaw is absolutely dropped, and I'm completely floored by, it was already exceptional again at the end of season 2, but seeing here, it's like, it's another level of greatness. It's a triumph. It's an absolute storytelling and technical triumph.
Oh, I mean, you said it all right there. This was a magnificent episode in my mind. It blew me away on so many levels. It kind of brings many generations of Star Wars together. I mean, I love that the Clone Wars are in this, Post Jedi is in this, the original trilogy is in this, and just all of the lore and the pieces, artifacts, locations are just, oh man, this one was just loaded. This was a treasure trove of Star Wars.
And you thought it worked seeing Luke like that too? Like you thought it was pretty awesome as well?
Oh, I did. Yeah. And it didn't, it never dawned on me that, oh, this is odd. No, I just thought it was great. It was perfect. It was great storytelling. And everything moved forward. The one thing, and this is not a downgrade on the episode or anything like that. It's more character here. The one thing that I thought seemed odd was how uncomfortable Boba Fett seemed in that administrative role of like commander in general. He just seemed sort of out of place.
Really?
I felt like he's a soldier. He's a soldier, not a commander. And so I don't know what to make of it. I mean, I feel like, I don't know. It's not I feel like, but I recognize that Fennec Shand is the one that's marching around, describing the situation, going through all the different scenarios. And Boba Fett was just sort of standing there. I felt like not lost, but just sort of out of place. He looks to Nando, gives him the head nod. I love how Nando gives him the head nod, like Boba Fett gave somebody the head nod. Leia. It was Leia when she brings in Chewbacca as the bounty.
Yeah.
And she looks over at him and Boba Fett gives him that like little helmet nod. Mando did the same helmet nod to Boba Fett in this episode. So I don't know. I just found that to be really interesting in my mind, how Boba Fett seems a little out of place. But again, it leaves me wanting more Boba Fett. I want to see the resolution of this.
Right.
And I want to see how all the pieces come together. I want to see how all of these different threads of Star Wars come together in this war with the Pikes. Fascinating.
Absolutely fascinating. Well, it was fascinating, Tom, to hear you break down the episode with me, and I love what you brought to the table as always. Please let everybody know where they can reach out to you if they want to ask you any questions about the book of Boba Fett or talk about your amazing podcast, Teachers in the Dungeon.
Oh, well, thank you so much. Yeah, if you want to talk about Boba Fett, reach out to me on Twitter at Draftline, DRAFTLINE. Love to talk more about this and hear your thoughts of Cad Bane and Ahsoka Tano, Luke Skywalker and Grogu training. Oh my gosh. And all the things with the Mandalorian and Boba Fett. And so reach out to me there. Or if you love adventure, you love stories like the Boba Fett story has been telling, this book of Boba Fett is just an adventure. It's a Western. It's all of these things. Join me on Teachers in the Dungeon, where we break down our Dungeons and Dragons games. We talk Dungeons and Dragons. If Dungeons and Dragons and role-playing is not your thing, or you've never really explored it, come and join us for a couple episodes. We'd love to have you. Hop on, give us feedback, let us know what you think of the show. And Dan, I can't wait to talk about the Book of Boba Fett again next week.
I can't either. And if you want to weigh in and have your voice shared throughout the podcast Galaxy airwaves, be sure to join me next Monday night at 7 o'clock p.m. Central Standard Time for Facebook Live and get your top 5 list ready of your most powerful favorite moments from this chapter. Until next time, everybody, remember this is the podcast you're looking for.